Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Natural Female Muscle Podcast. Today, for episode 27, we are joined by Ali ROSS-WILLETTS. Ali is a women's physique competitor, having won multiple titles in this division, including the UKDFBA Heart of England title, second at the UKDFBA British, and she was also crowned the BNBF British champ in her last year of competing in 2022. Although 2022 was actually not Ali's first year of competing, she did actually compete for the first time in 2021, but took a huge leap in progress from those 2 years, especially with regards to what she brought to stage, which was really incredible. So looking forward to talking to Ali about that today. But all in all, it's just going to be nice to have a good conversation to really understand a little bit more about what goes on behind the scenes with Ali as an athlete and what has brought her to being the physique athlete that she is today. So thank you very much for coming on. Looking forward to talking to you about your journey.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me, and really thanks for inviting me. What a pleasure. I've seen a lineup of ladies on here, so yeah, what an honor for sure.
No, you're very welcome. I mean, I obviously saw you predominantly last year on stage because I didn't see you at any of your shows in 21. And yeah, I was pretty blown away myself. I always try and keep a close eye on the people that I see, up and coming, or just presenting something that I think is always, for me, it's never just about, oh, what does the physique look like on stage, or have they just come out of nowhere? It's like that person has clearly worked incredibly hard to get to where they're at. And I know that you're one of those people. And you can always tell when somebody presents that on stage and they love what they do. And, they've clearly worked so hard for that. And it was amazing for me to see you present that at the shows that you did last year. So you were always on my radar to get you on. And it's going to be really good to chat to you about that a little bit more in detail.
Oh, thank you. I think that's really, really sweet because yeah, I think relatively speaking, I think you could say I came out of nowhere really. And I'm fine to talk about 21 because I think the point of this is like what was going on and how you developed and what did you learn and like how did you get to where you are. So look, thank you for your kind words because I think anyone who gets on that stage and manages to get themselves in that condition and shape, it's not an overnight job at all. There's a lot more work that goes in, like you say, in the kind of grind and in the behind the scenes. So yeah, I appreciate the words and yeah, happy to get into it wherever you want to take it. But yeah.
Yeah, well, you're very welcome. I think it's a great place to start, just like you've said, is it always looks like, to the external perspective, this person has just done a quick prep this year. They've got on stage and they've just got all this muscle. They've made all this progress in such a short period of time. But what a lot of people often don't see is the real background years of training that have gone into that, and the long journey of whether it be even training at lower intensities, maybe it's not even been bodybuilding, but just going to the gym. It all adds up and makes such a huge difference. And so many people don't see that. So the best place for us to start with you really is just, what was it that actually got you into just training and going to the gym in the first place? And like, did that, I know you said it began at quite a young age, but how did that actually come about for you?
So yeah, I think getting straight into honesty, I got pretty chubby as like a 16, 17-year old. And at the time it was just like, oh, that's not really where I want to be. And I think I just turned to the easiest thing, which was just go move yourself, go work out. And my school at the time had a little gym. So I just took myself there every day, Laws, and it's evolved from that really. And I thought, well, that's actually like medicine at that point. So it got me a little bit thinner and a little bit happier in myself as a little 16-year-old.
Yeah.
And then I think, and again, it's only now I can reflect on the fitness journey I've had because you don't really ever do that. But
Yeah.
definitely hasn't always been with the objective of like go and lift heavy things in a really structured way. Of course it hasn't. But I think then when I went to uni, I was like running and I was playing basketball and I was playing like the team sports. So
Yeah.
I still used the gym, which was kind of ingrained as a habit by that point from school to like help my athletic performance and my the strength and my speed and how you look. Of course, let's not let's lie about it. There was a bit of a vanity mission as well back when I was a bit younger. So I kind of kept it in through uni just to help me stay kind of strong and with my performance for basketball really. And then I went to the big bad world of working in the commercial industry, which I'm sure we'll come on to. And actually it became like, give me an hour of the day that's my own, that I can just let all the stress and anxiety of the day out. And I think the discipline of going to the gym every day, committing to that hour, and like you say, I wasn't smashing weights at that point, but I was working hard for me at that point with what my goal was, which was strength and feeling good and looking good.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think if you think I'm kind of 41 this year, that might be what a kind of 15, 20-year relationship of iterative sorts with gym and fitness.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it never ever was this, I kind of saw bodybuilding and that's what I wanted for my physique. It was iterative, and yeah, so it was basically because I loved feeling healthy and fit. But then I think where I was in the commercial world and the career that I still have, the days were quite stressful. There was a lot of like high anxiety. There was a lot of like stress and pressure. And I just found it such a release for me physically, but also I took a lot mentally from it. And I think that's, if I've thought about kind of this podcast, is that's where I think my mindset has been built in the business world. And
Mm.
actually, it's really helped me over here. So yeah, it wasn't born out of a big bad dream to be in a bikini on a stage one day. It was really kind of to serve me as I've moved through different points of my life, I guess.
Yeah, that's amazing though, because I think that's probably, I mean, let me know your thoughts, but it almost sounds like it's allowed you to develop this really positive relationship with training in the gym from the start, really, because it's always been something that has been there that you wanted to do to help physically and mentally keep you in a good spot. Whereas I think sometimes people, whether it be for different reasons, they maybe force themselves to go to the gym, or they create such a negative association that they have to do it, or that it's like this task that is so like draining or negative, rather than actually seeing the positives from it. And I think that sometimes having like a career and a job like you have, especially at that point in your life when it was very, very busy, it's like you actually appreciate it so much more because you are grateful to be able to go and to be able to train and to have that time, rather than feeling like you're kind of forced to go.
Spot on, genuinely spot on. And I think, like I say, it's only when you think back to like certain points in your life and actually what got you through them and thinking about how dark some of the days were, or wherever that day had taken you. um I used it to serve me and support me, and I think that's the difference. And that's why I guess that I fell in love with training and the benefits of training.
Yeah.
And then I think obviously meeting Mark, which I'm pretty sure we'll come on to, but just like leveled it up and changed the game really in terms of like what I was doing already and what I'd built underneath here. By doing what I was doing and how I needed it, I'd built something pretty decent. So yeah, it was definitely a support system to me, not a torture or not something I had to go and do, because it was, oh my God, if I don't, I'm like something I really needed it. Like I really attached myself to the benefits of it straight away.
What was your training actually looking like for you at that point? I know it's probably very different now, but it's good for people to get a bit of a perspective on that.
Well, I mean, despite my very heavy 5 foot frame right now, I used to be a runner. I used to be a runner. I just used to run a lot. I used to run a lot. I did like marathons and half. So a lot of what I would do would be like leg strength.
Yeah.
A lot of what I do would be, I mean, I would do like a lot of interval training, a lot of cardio training,
Mm.
probably. And then I think what I would end up doing is like half an hour cardio, and then I would do like some leg extensions with some and you know the what is it, the TRX is where you put your foot in and you put like a split lunge going on. So I'd kind of do all this dynamic, clever nonsense, which Mark and I still laugh at because how we met, he just used to think I was ridiculous, when he still does. But yeah, so my training was, like I say, it wasn't structured. It was what I kind of Googled and thought would help my running.
Yeah.
But I also wanted like to still look quite nice in my business clothes. So there's a hybrid of cardio interval training with some like full body 40-minute sessions that I would just like make up from where I'd found the internet. And back in my day, there was not that much. I'm not sharing my age, well, I'm already 41. I told you all, but there wasn't like as much noise and stuff, which is maybe good because
Mm.
like, what do you do for your back? There was like 3 sources, whereas now it's like 55 people telling you how to pull and push it. So yeah, it wasn't structured. It was structured for me. Let's be all like relative to each other. It was structured for me, but yeah, it was to support what I did at the time, which was a lot of running and road biking.
Mm.
Um, and then it started to become like a bit more focused on the strength training, but that was kind of in the last 5 to 7 years, I'd say it's properly like shifted the balance to very little cardio, and predominantly strength and resistance training now.
Yeah, but so much of that definitely still provides you with a lot of benefit. I'm sure it gave you a lot of good cross transfer into then shifting into strength training, but also even like, I think a lot of people also don't realize, and it's why a lot of athletes from like other sports come into bodybuilding and they kind of take to it so fast, is that you don't necessarily need to be strength training to be building like still a good baseline of muscle. And if anything, it's like if you take someone who's done like 1 or 2 years of strength training only versus somebody who's been doing some form of training for like 15 years, like that's gonna outweigh the couple of years of strength training every time. So
yeah, I think you're right, because I think what it does, without even knowing it, and you're not doing it for a progressive overload, you're not, but you are. The thing is, right, if you're in love with the gym and training and you're quite competitive innately and it's inside you, you're not going to go and leg extend for 2 years, the same reps and the same weight. I wasn't doing that. So without coordinating the overload, the progression that way, of course I was going in and beating my reps, or I was moving up weights. And of course my squat was getting stronger, because I'm not going to go in and do the same thing. Because I guess the other thing is, strip this all away, right? If you love to train and you love there's a drive in you for your own like improvement anyway. So of course I wasn't structured, but there was a kind of any element of subtle subconscious progression that was just happening because I wanted to better every single Tuesday that was pushed. I wanted to go and get that a bit stronger, and I wanted to lift those heavier, So I think it wasn't written and choreographed for progression, but like you say, I think I had a propensity then when I did level up into like proper structured sets and programming, my body was kind of already used to the mechanics of certain movements, because I was squatting and I was pressing and I was doing all of the kind of classic compound stuff that, I mean, I'm old school, I still just do all that now, right? But so I think you're absolutely right. And thinking about it now, it's like light bulb is, I wasn't able just to start training like 5 years ago and like I built my quads, right? Like those have kind of been with me through the running, through the basketballing, and then through the light, supportive and kind of complementary training I was doing.
Yeah, 100%. So let's come on to when things did actually transition and level up to kind of where they're at now, which I know you've mentioned to me was mainly when you met your husband, Mark. So do you want to run through what actually caused that transition and then how it did actually lead into more of a bodybuilding style of training for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I met Mark again. I was still commercially in the business world at this point, so I was an independent woman on my own, and it moved me to Sutton Coldfield. Zero disrespect to Sutton Coldfield, but I mean, yeah, let's just leave it there. But Sutton Coldfield where it moved me to, and that's where Mark was based. And like I said, the first thing I did was I got a gym membership. Met Mark on the gym floor. Rest is history, and we won't go into that. But Mark was obviously, for anyone who doesn't know Mark is a kind of competing and seasoned bodybuilder in his own right. So I think I, at the time, was learning about what on earth is he even doing, and I was like, I'd gone through a couple of cycles of prep with him at this point. I was like, what are you even, like, what are you doing? You're weighing. It was really like, different. Like the prep, the dedication, the commitment, the sacrifice, like, and actually being introduced to it as a complete, like, never in my brain watching from the side, Mrs. Supportive Partner. I was like, geez, like this is like deep commitment time. And I think the reason that I didn't even begin to talk about it because it was his thing. My thing was over here doing what I'm doing. And also I just kind of thought, seeing what I'd seen and how just committed and how much it takes of you physically, spiritually, emotionally, everything. I just went, well, I'm over here doing 13 hours a day, mate. There's no way I could even begin to contemplate it. So it just was never a thing. And then we used to always joke, and he'd go, "Al, side chest, Al, like side tricep."
Yeah.
And I would just like be in like stupid pants in my apartment with him, and I would do a little side tricep, and we'd just laugh about it. And then I met Darren Loxton, who is Mark's coach, who is just a wonderful coach and an even more wonderful friend to Mark and I now. And Darren and I met, and he was like, "Oh, do you never fancy?" Because obviously I was training, and at that point that would be maybe 2 years in with Mark and I was really training with Mark, and he would take me with him to train, and I think he was very good at then putting me structure. So I was training 6 days a week anyway. So he didn't have to get me into the gym.
Yeah.
He had to just make sure that, Ali, like, let's just noise this up a bit. Let's just really turn this up. And then he started giving me like leg programs, then push. And I was introduced to like splits and what does that even mean? And like, what's pull and blah, blah, blah. And it sounds stupid to say now because you're just so fluent in my world now. But I was just like mind blown. And I think it was such a joy to me because I loved to train. And Mark, who has lived in the fitness industry with all this knowledge that he brought about the programming and why you would do that and then attack and all these things. And my mind was just blown and I just got head down straight into it. But again, at this point, it was never, ever with an objective of to join him. Never, ever. It was just, actually, Ali, you're quite strong. Let's just keep growing you. And then, yeah, Darren and I had a really kind of light-hearted, jovial conversation when Mark was starting prep in 21.
Okay.
And he just went, oh, come on, like, let's just give it a go. And I went, right, you pair, because they were just like that.
Yeah.
And I went, right, let's just do it. Okay, I'll do it. So the agreement we had, and Darren, I don't know if you listen. I love you, Darren. You're good. We were kind of saying, well, let's just see. And I was kind of saying, look, let's no pressure. I've got this, I do other things. Let's just see. So I did a prep. It was only 14 weeks. And I'd managed to shift like quite, my body like responded.
Yeah.
Like to your point earlier, like you'd built a base of like metabolic health, and I was kind of already like, I was never this binger. I never had a bad relationship with food. So I'd never really slowed down or broken the efficiency of my system. So luckily, Darren put me on like a prep diet and I proper did it. And I was like, ooh, I was really excited and proud of myself. It's hard. And that's when it leveled up, when the jokes turned into like, could we do this? And actually, I was so proud of Mark and so impressed with what it took that I went, I'll have a bit of that achievement. I'll have a bit of that better in myself. And I'd love to feel like despite everything else that's going on and how hard this is and how much grind this takes, I'd love the feeling of like getting to that point, not the stage, but the point where that is like optimal human up there. Do you know what I mean? That's it. And I was like, yeah, let's have a bit of that. And then the rest is the 2021 season, right? Where I stood on a very terrifying UKDFBA stage as like a figure girl, next to some absolute like queens in the game now, right? Which I actually had forgotten all about. And Mark,
which show was that?
Oh, right. Who even knew? So I did MPA, right? Where it was like, I'm not disrespecting MPA,
Yeah.
but there's levels to the game, right? So we did really well there. But then we chucked me into a UKDFBA. I actually want to say it was Ben Hall in rugby.
Okay.
And I was bigger at the time because we weren't playing. That's disrespecting it. We weren't playing around at all, but we just didn't know where to put me and what shows to go into and what does my body actually look like? And I like, can you even move around up there in those heels, or it wasn't a disrespectful play. That's the wrong terminology. It was an explorative. Okay, let's see what physique class looks like here. Let's see what the figure class. Because at that point I wasn't big, not as big as I am now, but I had less tissue then. I had a bit of a decent shape. So they're like, well, figure feels like the way. And I think the conditioning that we brought in 21, obviously in hindsight and knowing what we got last year was not way off. We were like 3-4 kilo off probably. So yeah, I was up on stage with the likes of Meg Liz. And I remember seeing her on the telly backstage and I was like, you are
she's
fire. Oh, she's fire.
That's actually crazy though, because I feel really bad saying this, but I don't remember seeing you on stage in 21. I was there, but I do remember seeing you on stage in 22, obviously. But I'm assuming, like you said, you were maybe like 3-4 kilos heavier, which for somebody of like your physique as well, which is now something that you and Darren will know, is like your physique probably really comes to life as well when you're like in that condition, which for some females, like when they actually come down to figure condition, it actually not necessarily lets them down a bit, but doesn't show their true strength.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's spot on. And I think, look, the 21 season, so that's, to answer your question, it transitioned from basic foundation of potentially what was good physique under here, plus intrigue, and actually just like exploiting my natural innate, not competitive with anyone else nature, but I'm super driven. Like if anyone, I'm just super like, give me some shit to do and I will just get this done for you. And if it involves me either succeeding or failing, we're just gonna get it done. So I think you're right about the conditioning, and I'm not even sorry that you didn't, remember on stage. I wish no one had ever, and that's a good actually thing. Let's let that just stay there. But yeah, you are right, I think. And then 22 was like a very, very different ballgame for us.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we can probably run through in even just 21, but I think the fact that you actually kind of felt like you might want to compete after you'd met Mark and him doing his thing, even though I totally understand your mindset of being like, that's his thing, I don't want to kind of get involved. But the fact that it was still interesting to you probably sheds a really positive light on Mark and Darren and the way that they prep and approach bodybuilding, because there's a lot of people who, I mean, it can be for a number of different reasons, but when they meet partners who bodybuild and it actually just puts them off it, like they actually don't want to do it. Do you think that the way that they approach bodybuilding and the way that they love it really had such a positive influence on you? Yeah.
Honestly, and actually, I still would consider myself, and it's why I was saying, oh, if you really want to speak to me, I consider myself still to be very much on the periphery. I love it, but it's very much not my like jumping, all consuming. It's definitely still my passion and hobby, but I have like a number one, over here, as do others. But I think being able to see Mark at the depth of prep versus what the narrative sometimes that you now understand to be the depth of prep, they are like totally different things. And I think that's probably testament to a couple of things, right? It's testament to Mark's just deep love, genuine, like innate, thriving inside him love for the sport. Because he doesn't see it as like, oh, I've got to start prep. Like and I'm not putting him off and he would die. He just loves it. And I'm sure AJ's, if you have that as your why and your motivator, the fat phase, the cut phase, the look, all these phases are just like, I'm not saying a simplistic tick box because that's too belittling of it, but he's got it, and it's in a different compartment. It's a different compartment for him. And I think the way that Darren approaches coaching is very much, it's classic. It's not traditional in the sense that he's not nuanced and modern. Darren just pulls the right levers at the right time. It never felt stressful. They were never chasing. It was never digging. It was none of this language was there. Because I think Darren's level of knowledge and maturity and experience means that he knows how much time he needs. He knows athletes. He knows them inside out. And I think I was watching that from the sidelines. So I think you're absolutely, again, intuitively spot on.
Yeah.
If I'd had a different experience as an onlooker of what prep was, or phrase it a different way, if I didn't have Mark around and I was reading like the narrative on Instagram about what prep's like, would I have wanted to see what I could do? I'm not so sure. Because while I'm not saying that's a bad narrative to have, it definitely could be a blocker and a barrier for some of the athletes or someone who thinks they could. But it'll send them, that it could be the reason they just go, oh, do you know what? Well, I'm not sure. So yeah, spot on question. I think watching Mark and the fact that I'm like, okay, so he is digging deep, but I quite like that. Like I quite enjoy that. So I think it is why Mark and I were not sitting here skipping through prep, right? That just doesn't happen for anybody. Like, can you imagine the pair of us idiots skipping around? But I just feel like it has allowed us to keep it in a perspective that's really important. Because it gets dark, right?
Yeah, I think that's such an important point to make, is like there's the two things, is like you kind of got to have that mindset anyway of wanting to push yourself to be something that's hard competitive to your best level, but also what you're surrounded by, and the environment in bodybuilding is crazy. Like the people that you're around can really shift your mindset towards the way you think. And I get a lot of that from talking to Darren. Like I can tell what he's like as a coach and the way he talks about bodybuilding. I can tell that he doesn't make his athletes feel stressed or worried or nervous. He's just very much like, yeah, this is what we do, and then you have a good time, and like, but he gets the job done. Like he's not like he's not like one of those coaches who's very slack with it. Like he will get you in good shape and he'll get you on stage competitive. But I think he has great management of that, which is obviously awesome. And how did you obviously find that then in deeper detail, like with that first prep that you did do. I know you said it was quite a moderately more short one, in like 40.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
But you had a great response, which I think says a lot for, you know, being at a point before you start your prep where, for anyone really, when you're not maybe like dieting here or doing this and that, and for a lot of people actually having just like a nice baseline where you had actually been at, which is where I think a lot of people try and go, oh, I'm going to do a prep, when they've spent years trying to crash diet and do all this stuff, and it just doesn't respond the same way.
No, I think it's exactly right. And actually, again, sitting reflecting, it was never like the universe designing that was like toe in the water. But if you really start to get whimsical about it, it was probably the best introduction that I could have had, because the prep was legit. Like, there was no shortcut. It wasn't that, like, you know, I was to plan. There was macros and calories and steps and expenditure. There was all the same variables. Time was just 14 weeks. Like, and I'm sure, Darren, that's what we gave me, because at the time was, to be fair, because I wasn't bouncing out of a bulk or an, you know, I hadn't been doing the phases. So you're getting a girl who trained with a body somewhere under not a huge amount of body fat, right? So Darren was like, actually, okay, 14, you know, we can clean you up in 14. And I think that not only the prep, with Darren being just as composed as he is, gave me an idea that, like, it's discipline, it's commitment, no matter how hungry or whatever you are, like there's loads of sacrifice and the dailies and all that stuff does stay the same. But I think the being on stage was honestly the most mind-blowing, I'm not going to swear, eye-opening, like, because if you've never thought about doing it, you're like, what the, like, what? And I think, what the hell, right? And I think I'm not really like, I'm not massively elegant, you know, sure. I'm not massively elegant, and I'm not like one to be, not show offy, because that's the wrong, again, language, but there's an element of exhibition to it. You know, you're in this very small thing and it's sparkling all over the place, and these are really dangly and your heels really high. So there's an element of quite a lot of ironic femininity to it, but I'm up there with my muscles out. So and that's the bit that Mark and I still have a little chuckle to, is I'm not fly. I'm not massively feminine, but I think to be up there, I massively underestimated just how it felt. I massively underestimated the transitions, the posing, all of what it took to be properly crafted. So I walked away from 21 super proud of myself, because what are your expectations like, right? Like, and that's the other thing. It really is all about why you're doing this. And I think the learnings that we took, and I'm not going to say these silly words about date and all, the learnings we took about my body, about its response time, its rate of loss, about what my physique looks like at different, you know, angles and positions and classes, really fed into what then became a pretty much, I'm not going to say that it was obviously better year on year, an improvement, but it's still paving the way for what we're working on right now. So yeah, it was such a bloody wonderful first year, that I came away with it feeling nothing other than like pride, elation, frustration, but drive to go get that way better. I just kind of went, I can do that way better. And Darren, the joke still now is, Ali, remember that time we were just gonna give it a go? And he still says that now. So yeah, definitely worth doing, but you got to take the right things away from it, and you got to go into it with the right expectation.
Did you come away from that season then in 21 knowing you were going to go again the year after and just make everything better than it was?
Yeah, and look, let's be, and I know I am never the person that's like, I didn't win. And I know everyone says that, but because I didn't come from watching this, and these stages are still quite new to me, right? Like, it's not, that isn't what my motivation was at the end of the season. My motivation was, honest to God, you can do that better, Al. Doesn't matter about, you can do that better. Now that you've seen that, and that was, say, like 85%, you know. So yeah, the three of us, Mark and I and Darren, came away and went, Al, there's a bit, if you were to really, like, I don't mean dial in better, no, I did the prep, but if we did it longer, if we really went now and built, like if you did 6 months of like proper lift, like not that I wasn't lifting loads, but there was a real like triage on legs. There was like a a top line program. We really went in. So yeah, we didn't know how good the season was going to be. We just knew that there was more for me to show to myself.
Yeah.
And that was the driver, is you can probably do a bit better than that.
Yeah. So did you do, like you said, a good 6 months of like pushing? Like, was that must have been your real first like phase of growing as well, right?
Proper phase of like labeled growth.
Yeah.
Because what I've been doing with Mark, and actually the other thing is, and COVID obviously like shut the world around, like massive tangent, but like stick with me. I probably did my best growth phase in my garden, in my gym here. Because I don't know why that is. I was still working, I was still doing all I was doing. But I think it was I was growing for like the years I was with Mark, but it wasn't like put your cows. There wasn't a right lot of like science behind it, or recovery and fuel and da. And it's not that Mark didn't try. It's just we just trained me, right? Because I was already quite good with food. I never, like you said, I was never under eating. I mean, look at me, I never under eat anyway. But I did, if Mark was to like eat this, I would eat. My relationship with food was never bad. So actually, we were pushing in protein, and I was eating a bit more of this, but it wasn't like that's the plan and that's what you're doing, and then you're doing 3 cycles of like, it wasn't choreographed. But I think there was a really serious period of growth before 21 anyway. But yeah, I think the last kind of, definitely when we stepped on stage in October through to the next like Feb, even though that's quite a short space of time, my physique responded really well to a very structured, like 2.5 legs. We put in some like where you need to be, Al, is this, and this. So actually, you've got 6 months to go make it better. So yeah, I would say it was, and the thing that Darren's really good at, and just to clarify, Mark and I do all of the kind of off-season training, building work. Okay. Darren is our like fat loss coach.
Yes.
He's involved in us all year round for sure, always wants to know what we're up to, and he always will look at us and give us some counsel. But Mark and I went away and did the digging. So yeah, there's never really been, and I'm not just dispelling the myths of you have to eat. I completely understand it, but I still wouldn't even say that last like 4 or 5 months of 21 into 22 was I at like a huge surplus. I wasn't. I was feeding my recovery. I was feeding to build some mass, to lift, recover. Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't super scientific, but the objective was go and hit some shit and lift some stuff.
Yeah, and ultimately like setting up like a good start point for another prep in 22 as well. So how different, or were there any differences then between the prep in 21 to 22, both in the way that you actually managed it in terms of the prep, but also mentally as well, going into that as well as your second season now?
Yeah, I think the prep, Darren's approach didn't significantly shift, to be honest, because it's here's your plan, you're in a deficit, we track it each week and we check in, and so the systematic prep approach was still, the nutritional side was the same. I think the mindset, I'm very lucky in that, like I keep saying, I've got another world, I've got an escape. So actually, and again, I'm lucky, or I now know, having calmed down my consulting a little bit and having a bit more free time, I think that actually another blessing I had was I was working all the time. So I think that instead of it being such a focus, or meal 3s and 3, and you get a little bit like, oh, I'm starving or whatever, or you're in gym, and it wasn't that I was not taking it seriously, but I also had some like parameters that I had to put all that prep stuff in. So I did all my diet and I did all my steps, I did everything, but I was doing it around a world where like I was in boardrooms and I was presenting and I was doing conferences. It was, so I've kind of had a very, not lucky, because that world's crap as well, right? But it's not my all-consuming environment, and I think I'm very lucky in that it gives me a bit of distraction. So I think I'm lucky in that respect. But we gave us more time. So I did a 33-week like from start to finish.
Yeah.
I think what Darren does very well is he doesn't run you too heavy in the off, so you don't actually have, and that's not because he doesn't believe, you know, he just thinks that if you've got the right strength and work ethic and intensity in the gym and your program is solid and you're in a bit of a surplus, like 15-20% above your maintenance, he's not in that school, and this is not shit, he's not in the school of, right, it's 3,000, you need to be in that, you know, he doesn't put you in a tremendous bulk situation, because if you're, and like you say, if you're of a physique like mine, you kind of need to be really careful of the strength gains that the additional weight's going to give, plus the balance of getting that condition in the 30 weeks, because anything more than 30, what we did learn was I start to tip to just like not looking, the look just goes. So I think that was the thing that I really love about Darren is, and I relate to, because I don't like to travel huge. I'm happy to get mass for strength, but I think that we entered it not silly above my stage weight. We might have been at that point 10, 11 kilo above stage weight. We gave me 33 weeks, which is much longer. But in terms of like what was different was nothing. Genuinely, in terms of Darren's like management of us, the training schedules, everything stayed the same. But I think, if I'm really honest, now that you can think about it, because I actually felt like I could be competitive this time for myself. It didn't make me work harder. There was a little thing here going, oh, like another session, leave it all in there. Like, and leave it. There was a little something that made me think, like, this is game time now. Like, you want to see something, so this is on you. And I think that it was like the discipline that you've got to have got me to a real like next level of energy and intensity and work ethic. And to your point, the condition that we ended up bringing in, well, I'm super proud of it, because I think, like, when you're up in these physique and the bodybuild categories, like, it isn't all about size at the end of the day. If you are balanced and your symmetry is serious and your condition is on, you get forgiven a little bit of, like, you know, the size of the arms or whatever, because who can do arms? Because I can't, tell me how. But yeah, the condition, we were really pleased with it at the end of the day. So yeah, the prep was similar, but I think it was like within me what changed and what my outlook kind of put in front of me, and I was like distracted for a lot of it. So I think it was in hindsight helpful.
As a result, then, did you feel like it actually wasn't that much more challenging to push for those new levels of condition? Because, like, one, you obviously had the distractions, but I don't know whether it really did make such a difference having that long time frame for the prep, because realistically, I mean, me and AJ talk about this all the time, is when people feel really horrible at the back end of a prep, it's often less to do with the condition that they're in, because you see people who aren't even in complete condition, but they feel awful. And it's also to do with the amount of weight that they've had to lose over that, and how fast the rate of loss has actually had to be for them as well.
Yeah, that's where I look at. I can't speak highly of Darren, and that's the way that I've watched Mark and Darren do it for the longest time. Darren will never, well, and with us anyway, it's always been about time. And I tell you why. For us is, we do the rate of loss. We do chart. You know, mine was like 0.4 to 0.6 every week, kilos. And that would be, that's quite slow, Al, but it isn't, because it was every week, and it was without fail every week, because my body wasn't stressed, and I wasn't aggressively pulling this, and I wasn't carbs in, and I wasn't cycling, and I wasn't expenditure up, and I wasn't moving things around. And that's, again, not to dismiss that school of thought, but for us and for me and our systems, the length of time was critical. One, because psychologically then, yes, you're deprived and you're depleted and you're tired, but we never felt like we were on like absolute death's door with it. Of course, there were irritable moments and times that piss you off and times of the month and all the things that you would get and stress of life, but we were never chasing hard. And I think that's what time gives. I think that Darren has got a very good strategy of qualifier ready versus finals ready. No matter what that is, he just knows it. And I think his athletes this year have shown, anyone who's watched Darren's schooling, is he's got a strategy, and we all buy into it. And actually, the qualifications, placings don't matter. It doesn't. You just need your paper. Just get your paperwork out and get out of there, and we'll do what we need to do. And then we go back into the back cave and we do what we need to do. So yeah, to your point, I think everyone's different, right? And I think everyone's body responds, and people like more mental challenge or shorter diets and faster losses. But aggression, I don't believe works for the body, and I definitely don't think it works for the mind, because depending on how much aggression you have to deploy and when, that can be a real like head mess.
Yeah, definitely. I think I really have always seen, I mean, you see it with every athlete, but especially with females and getting in condition, like it's no joke. And you've got to manage that well. Like for any, I mean, for any natural athlete, if you want to get in condition and actually still look good and not just look like you've literally withered away,
bird, yeah.
You've got to manage it well. And, you know, that's very reflective of that. Because like you said, you were 10, 11 kilos above stage weight with 30 weeks to go to do a qualifier and to do qualifiers and to do finals.
Yeah, so that was my total season. Yeah, so I think we looked, because we're obviously talking about what the game plan for next year, we were looking at like rate of loss, and we were looking at what I hit for each of the shows and when we peaked and when we didn't. And actually, and this is really interesting because obviously having gone through it this year, watching and learning, and obviously Mark's client says, I got probably down to, and I won't share weights because it's either triggering and it's all very individual, and it's not interesting or relative, but I got to a stage weight for the first BNBF qualifier, and it was X. And then I probably had 7-8 weeks left to then get ready for UKDFBA, then WNBF, and then the finals again. Touch wood if we got there. But I was looking back, and actually my stage weight from weight, not look, weight from qualification was, you know, X.8. Then the next qualifier was 0.6. The next qualifier was 0.4. Then the final was point. So I actually spent about 7 weeks chasing nothing really, apart from improved visuals and improved look, and actually holding on to my fullness and my bellies and everything, because we could have gone mad, which is again, Darren's very good. We could chase, and I could be stepping and expenditure up and and all these things. And again, everyone's individual, but what worked for me, for the category I compete in, and for my body shape and what I built, condition was key, and I couldn't lose it. And I think that's the bit that was quite difficult, because when you get to qualifier and you've got your invite, and then right, well, let's go again, and let's get a new low, let's chase for a new low, and you're like, but I'm pretty peeled, like I'm actually okay. And actually, my honesty looking back, and Darren, hopefully he might not listen, but if he does, our best look was UKDFBA qualifier, because we're all got a look, right? You all know where you want, you know.
Yeah.
I obviously achieved the BNBF finals because of course we improved. But in terms of an overall look and a fullness and a tightness and the way in which I looked at the UKDFBA Heart of England, probably was, in my opinion, in my eyes, my best look. But then when you've achieved that and your feedback is super condition, you know, you're really balanced, you go, right, what am I going to do? What do you want? What do you want to do? What am I going to go and lose? What am I going to chase? What do you need to do? And they're like, just kind of stay where you are. And you're like, oh, what? Because the whole 25 weeks or 30 weeks at this point has been, come on, something. As a result of this, I get this.
Yeah.
This is and this is the biggest takeout I have, having built a mindset that can stand in front of hundreds of people and presenting and all the stress that brings. There's nothing more humbling in the mind than stand still, be on prep, sacrifice stuff, but don't expect to see the skate, you know. And that was really difficult, because I think the mindset is you're always wanting to chase and see a new line and get a little bit smaller on the scales. But actually, I'm glad we didn't, because to your point, I believe that if we had done anything stupid with carbs or calories or expenditure, I would have started to look super flat. And I think there's a point of flat that you can't reverse. So yeah, you are right. Time is everything, because aggressive is fine for like mini cutting or like a tidy up phase, because actually like just get it done.
Yeah.
But if you are chasing and expecting a kilo a week, kilo and a half a week, your body's going to be stressed so quick. So Darren is mighty when it comes to that end of it, for sure.
Yeah, and you don't realize, like, when you get to a qualifier, you almost don't realize how stressed and like smashed your body is at that point. No. So it's like when you keep pushing from there, especially when, like you say, they say you're actually good. Realistically, the only improvement you can make is having more muscle, which in in 3-4 weeks, you're not going to change. So don't try and chase condition when really you're not going to show anything more.
Yeah. Because they're not going to say to me, Ali, it's actually your biceps and your top line. I'm like, oh, well, fuck, I can't do that in a month. You know, so actually what they say is for next year, think about this. And that's brilliant. Let's put that in the school book for next year. But yeah, you're right. If you're getting out muscled or if you've not got that frame or something's lacking, you can't do anything about that. And actually don't then divert your attention for chasing that to chase other things, because they're different things. So yeah, time is, and I think that's when I said Darren's classic and traditional, but it wasn't to be detrimental. It was actually to his benefit, because natural athletes, Darren knows how long shit takes. He just knows how long it takes.
Yeah, and it's a different ball game as well. So having someone who knows that really, really makes a huge difference, no matter whether.
And he keeps your feet on the ground, because I think, like you said, in the middle of it, Darren, but like, what we changing, what we doing? He's like, oh, you're actually going to eat more. And I'm like more, and it's such, and because I'd never had like it's just funny because it's almost like my real first proper conversation with Darren at different points of a proper like competitive season. So yeah, and it wasn't because like I want to win. It was, we can make me better. Like, Darren, I'll do whatever you want. Like I'll do whatever you want. And he's like, oh, let's feed you up. And I'm like, oh God. I remember saying to Mark, like, I can't eat more. I don't want to eat more. But you just get so warped. And actually that's what your coach is for, is to go, Al, have a minute, go and find some chill somewhere and just do this. I'm telling you to do this. I think trusting who you choose to be in your corner, because I've seen it, I guess, play out. I had to let go and that's what you have to do.
What did you guys actually do in your peak weeks out of interest? Did you ever change very much, or?
Yes. What we did, and it kind of differed, right? Because we had, and I guess it depends on if it's a peak week pre-qualifier and how ready you are and if you're still digging. So for example, early qualifiers, I don't deplete and carb load because I've still got about 3 kilos to lose. So actually, why would you load me back up when I'm still probably... So Darren's very good at just saying, look, we will still cruise. But actually what he does is he tapers slightly on like the Tuesday, Wednesday maybe, or he'll take your expenditure down. He tends to not touch your food, he'll just rest you more.
Yeah.
Darren rests the body rather than takes food and things away from it. He will rest you more.
Not the fatigue.
If we're, just get the stress, get any of the water and cortisol. And then we didn't carb load when I wasn't in like supreme conditions of qualifier. We don't really.
Yeah.
Then for like final, if it was like 2, 3, 4 weeks later where I had managed to chip away like another 2 kilos, we would do a slight depletion Monday, Wednesday. But again, I'm not talking keto. I'm not talking like didn't any fat load, none of that stuff. It was literally like 20-30% calories came down, all from carbs really. Protein was kept high. Fat was always 30-40 grams moderate. And then we would put maybe 400 carbs in on the 400, 500. I would never load because I don't know, but watching Mark load and watching me load, they're very different things. Like women, I'm not sure. Like, I don't think we've got the surface tissue that means that you need to load us to like 1,200 carbs. But for us personally, qualifier ready, we didn't really do much manipulation because I was still chasing condition. Finals, we would do a little tiny carb load. But then we also had some shows where we were on the bounce peaking. And then all we would do is we would just put calories, we just reset them on that Monday. But not, and again, everyone's so different. But I guess what Darren learned about Mark and I straight away is we've not got the best stomachs. And I think we were chasing condition for sure and tightness and then filling back up. But I would rather keep my digestive health for the long term. So what Darren quickly knew was, Ali, we can strip you and fill you up, but your gut will bloat out anyway. And I just realized, I know my own self, I just wouldn't have recovered, Laws. I thought, you know what? I'm chasing like a look, but I'm also chasing like the ability to finish this season out. And I think a lot of people will just blow up their carb loading, cause themselves some digestional stress. And I'm not sure you recover once that happens. I think you can lose the water, but I don't know that you've done, the damage when you're that low. So yeah, we don't manipulate too much. But again, for me and for us in this household, we don't tend to. Mark's a bit different, but he can tell you that himself. He's a bit different.
Yeah, no, the digestion plays a huge role because the thing is your stomachs are always so sensitive at the end of a prep anyway. And it's often where most people mess up in the peaks is because they're changing so much, or they're putting a whole load of digestive stress on themselves. And especially for females, like you say, most of us are pretty small, especially for someone like yourself, very similar to me, like on the shorter end.
Yeah.
Think about how small your stomach is at that point.
Yeah.
You put a load.
I think our logic is there's been so much good happened in that like 20 weeks. This week's not about, it's about like you should be not, I'm not saying you should be ready on the Monday, but if you're still chasing certain things in that week, that we've always been very clear again for us, that week's the finesse week, that week's the shine week, that week's the polish and de-stress. That's not grinding it out. I mean, we obviously do weigh in for Darren, but I think more just as a measure, not as a kind of success gauge. That's not what he does. So yeah, we are quite classic in that respect because it's a long game, right? And if it's a balancing act between longevity of your body systems and looking how, it's a bit of a fine line.
So I know we obviously didn't mention it massively there, but I said at the start how you actually came away from that season then with the British in the BNBF, and then a second to, it was Nicola who won it that year, who then went on to win
the Worlds. Yeah.
So that was an immense season really for you to
Thank
come
you.
in with your women's physique debut. So how did you feel then coming away from that season and then just thinking about where your next steps were going to be in bodybuilding?
I thank you firstly because I appreciate the kind of the respect of someone like you telling me what a good season, because I'm still like, I'm new to this gig, but I was just like beyond buzzing because like I said before, the objective of even getting to like these top, like it sounds stupid, right? But top 3 or top 5 in a British final, don't sleep on that. That's huge anyway. So when you're going through qualifiers doing good, because it was like first in the qualifier, you've won the bit, and actually it sounds ridiculous, but you're winning like bodybuilding a one, physique, you're starting to get these places that you're like, you're not just top 3, okay, like okay, and it was just keep going, and I came away thinking beyond chuffed to be first in the BNBF, like beyond chuffed to stand in the UKDFBA and the WNBF stages, because sometimes you're like, there's only 2 of you. Like, that's not belittling anything, but sometimes you're a bit like, these stages were like 9 girls deep, like, real. And the WNBF was like, not a bonus show, but we kind of threw us in there because we were in, in the middle of the run. So we came away, both of us, just feeling super grateful, super proud, very happy. And I would say, just as fueled to see, because if you know you can come that far, it doesn't make you go, right, I'm going to win it next year. You go, but I could. And it's every year is just, and I think it's that new unlocked level of, right, if I thought I grind, I'll show you grind. So I think it's, both of us had a lovely, we actually went on our honeymoon at the end of it because we'd got married in the middle of our season last year, which added like a mad amount of complexity to the prep. So Darren gave us like our wedding weekend in Croatia off, which was very kind of him. So, but even when we were at the wedding, I'm like, oh, Leo, you kind of, you've done so much graft, right? And I'm drinking the bubbles, going like, yay, cheers to me. Like eating my wedding breakfast, like, oh my God, and I think it's warped, but we managed it. And you're cutting the cake going, oh my God, like I'm gonna eat the whole thing. So we came back from that, did all the seasons, and then we knew the honeymoon was there. And actually we were just really proud of ourselves, both of us. Like, I am Mark's biggest fan, and like he's incredible, and vice versa. So yeah, we are fueled, laws, and I think we agreed. And it's funny or not funny, we actually, because we got invited to the Worlds, which were in June. Darren was like, Al, it's on your doorstep. Mark's on your doorstep, and it's only like 6 months away. Come on. And if I'm really honest on here, we were going to go again, and January we started. And I remember just 10, 13 days in, Mark was cracking on because he just does, right? And he just switches into like another place. And I was about 10, 13 days in, and I went, babe, I ain't got this. Like, I've just not got this. And I was gutted, but not because like I wasn't going to go and do it, but because for the first time in like that last like 14, 15 months, I was like, I haven't got it. Like, I felt quite not let down, but I think, okay, well, what, Ali, listen then. Because I think if you get into such incredible, like for me personally, such conditioning
Yeah.
and a body fat that is super low and you hold it, I now know that doing this season this year would have been for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
And actually, the reason I could have bounced from 21 to 22 is because I was nowhere near ready in 21. And my prep wasn't long enough, my condition was not good enough. But 22, I was competitive. And I think when you are of a competitive condition in these categories, which is like, peeled as,
Yeah.
I couldn't have done it again. So we came away genuinely thinking we would do the world, but very quickly went, it does feels like we'd be doing it for the wrong reasons. And I think if you start with a kind of ambiguous motivation or drive, the whole thing's going to be like a massive chore.
Yeah.
And we just decided not to do it. So yeah, there's a little revelation. We were going to do it, but we just thought, like, step away. Your body needs to recover. If you want to do this for a couple more seasons, which at the time we kind of did, you've got to protect you've got to do what's right for yourself. So for us, super competitive season on the bounce with another, it just wouldn't have been right for us, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a smart decision. I mean, going from, like you said, it's so different to go from maybe not being fully shredded to then having 5 months and going again versus
Yeah,
being in condition and then competing again in literally like 6 months. It's challenging.
it felt too far. It felt like, it sounds stupid, but when I was ready for 22 prep, I was just like, switch it on, go. Doing that again, I couldn't find the switch. It didn't fucking go on. Like I couldn't do it. And I think you got to listen. And I think if you're chasing like the glory of it all, your prep's hellish. If you're doing it because this is now what you do because you've had a sustainable period of time growing and you've done it, and now I do this, I think it's a different entrance you take to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, personally, I think we would have been doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, it's hard because you realistically you don't just want to do a show because it's there. You want to do a show that aligns well with your prep.
Yeah,
I said to Lee so many times, I was like, it's so frustrating that show is in June because so many people will want to do it but can't because it just doesn't work out.
it's a weird early mid-season one. And if you're going to start firing end at May June shows, but then you really want to do the natural back enders, you're like, oh, I ain't got that. So yeah, it's a definitely a timing thing for that one.
But what are the plans then for you now? How did things go for you following on from kind of coming away from that prep? How has the year been? And how are you just feeling at this point with everything moving ahead?
I think I would be an absolute fraud if I said, we went on honeymoon and it was super and we didn't care that we were gaining weight and we just like we loved eating. I think coming out of that is if anyone's listening and is considering doing this, like 1000% trust yourself and do it, but be very clear about the other end. And I think that's the bit that, as a complete newbie,
Yeah.
I was not ready for what that would take me mentally. And I think as a female, it's maybe, and I'm generalizing, but I think as a female, it's maybe a little worse because you're voluntarily or involuntarily, but you can't control it gaining, and it's gaining quite quick, right? So you're at like 49, whatever you're at, and then within a week or two, it's like 52, 50, and it just feels like it's like, why? And I honestly think I was probably only at one with my body, with my loss of detail, with my all the stuff that was covered up. I probably genuinely only felt, and I probably still wouldn't even say the word happy about it, but at peace a little bit with it in like February the year after. So like
Yeah.
February this year, it probably took me the best part of 4 or 5 months to accept that I'm not going to look like that. I shouldn't look like that.
Yeah.
I will look like that again, but the role of what my body needs to do now needs to look like this.
Yes.
And I think that's honestly what I wasn't ready for. Darren's the best coach in the world, but I don't even think there's like a book you can read to be. It's such a torment your mind at that point.
Yeah, it's challenging. A lot of athletes will appreciate you honestly just being honest about that, because I don't think a lot of people open up about it. Because the hard thing is, like you said, is no matter how good your coach is, no matter how good your support network is, that phase, especially when you've gone into like that real condition and coming away from it, it's only something that you can come to peace with, as you describe, through yourself and through just giving yourself that time. But yeah, it is challenging. I think that half of it, as you've expressed there, is actually just letting people know that that's okay for it to feel hard and it's going to feel like that, rather than thinking that something's wrong with you or you're struggling with it and you don't know why you're struggling. And instead knowing that eventually you will be okay, you know, and you will come back to normalish.
And I think it was almost like, put it into perspective. If you have done a one-off show and you're not sure if you got like more seasons in you, or if this is a path you want to take, then you'll really struggle, because what you saw is like the bestest ever version of yourself. And actually, if your motivator was to see that, you will really struggle to like pass that on. If you are in the mindset that actually this is going to be a bit more of a longer journey, you just go, actually, I could get back there, but it took a lot of sacrifice. There's a lot of things that, don't forget what it took to get. I think it's very easy. We go, oh, I want to be shredded again, but remember that. Remember what it took, and remember how it felt, and remember how like not unhealthy your body was. But that's not a sustainable like level of nutrition to be putting in. Like, everyone's got abs, right? But if you cut yourself down enough, but you can't live there. So I think it's almost being able to go, it's not a fictitious world, but it's a moment in time world. And that's the body's look for that job. But if you want to come back and be better when you're doing that job, go away and do this job. And I think it just took me a while, because as a girl, you don't want to be traveling to like Christmas parties with like chubby this, and you don't want to be like, oh, I used to be it's just silly. We do it to ourselves. I was having this conversation with my own brain, like, people don't even think I train anymore, and oh, I don't even look like I train anymore. But that's me being super honest, because it just takes a lot for you to go, do you know what, I'm strong as long as my body is serving me the right way, as in I'm strong in here, I'm progressing in the lifts, I have now accepted that this is where my body likes to be, and it's where I need it to be, because I've decided to do this again. So yeah, I think the only thing that took me a while is just the adjustment to this escalating body weight. And you take 33 weeks to shift it, and fucking 3 to to whack it all back on. But yeah, so that was difficult. And then now we are I've had, honestly, probably one of the most dedicated years of like training and growth that I've had yet, because I obviously don't do quite as not high, but I'm not in the business world anymore. I've got my own business, so it's allowed me a bit more time. And because of that time, I have had the lucky, unfortunate position where I can not spend all day training. I don't do that. I still train at 6 and I still have an hour and a half. I still have to, work. But we have definitely been a lot more like forensic, and dialed up my programming and like work ethic, because we just want to give us the option if we want to come back next year. So we've traveled at a weight that's decent. We've never really been like 20% more than maintenance calories. We did, because it's just too difficult. If we were to come back again. And also it sounds stupid, but like if I'm hungry, I'll eat. And that sounds really stupid, but my body always has found a natural like place to be. And like where I'm at now, I might move around a kilo or two with water or whatever, but if I'm hungry, I'll definitely put this. Is not like I'm already fucking 13K above state. It's not like I'm trying to, it's just if I'm hungry, I will eat. If I feel like my recovery needs a bit more because I'm going to dial up for the next block, I'll do it. But I think it's, again, I'm not belittling the whole planning of it all, but I think there's a level of know your body as well. So yeah, we're eating and training like we are going to be, and I say we, him and I are going to be back next year, because I think we've had enough time to do the work on our physiques, and I think that we can both see some really interesting like changes that we've hopefully designed in there, and we can see that we've been achieving them. And I think it's just time. It feels like it's just time. I think, like you say, when you've reached a level of like muscularity and your class needs this, like I could take up 2, 3, 4 year off, but then, you know, I'm in the class and I think it's a bit more muscularity, but I'm not trying to go, you know what I mean? It's like if you're going from bikini up to physique or bodybuilding, there's a bigger journey necessary. Yeah, and I think that's the benefit. I didn't come in as bikini, and I've worked into each category because of the level of muscularity I carried. I kind of entered there.
Yeah.
So I think now what we're trying to work out is, okay, watching the season and everything's going on, where do we put me next year? So we're building what could be interchangeable between bodybuilding in certain federations potentially and physique in some others.
Well, that'd
So
be
we are planning a comeback, but do you know what it is? I don't know if I'm being coy about it, like, oh, I don't know. We're planning a comeback, but yeah, we're training and eating and sleeping and living as if we are.
good. Well, I hope to see that. If you do obviously compete more in bodybuilding, that would be cool to see as well, because you obviously did actually cross transfer into bodybuilding in 22 at the Heart of England. I remember you did that one.
I also did it in the BNBF, and do you know what? I actually only didn't do the final because of an admin error.
Yeah. Oh.
So I was meant to do the final. And again, look, it's hindsight and who knows. But yeah, I got there on the day, like proper ready to do the final of both.
Oh.
And then yeah, BNBF, like, you haven't signed up. I was like, what's that now? What? So yeah, who knew? Who knows what would have been?
No, but that'll, I mean, whenever you do get back on stage, like it'll be awesome to see anyway.
Thank you.
It's nice to hear that you're also just in a very, very good spot with recovering from your last prep. And that's really the most important thing I've touched on, is just feeling in a good spot, and you know when it's the right time anyway. And I know there'll be even more improvements to show when you do that, which would be cool. But thank you so much for coming on today and talking about all these things. Honestly, it's been amazing for me to hear so much about your journey and really like the ins and outs of that process, which for a lot of people is going to be amazing to listen to as well. So thank you so much for sharing that story. I really, really appreciate you taking the time today. And do you want to just, obviously you don't have to if you don't want to, but you can let people know where to find you, also where to find your coaching service that you also have as well, because I know you do that on the side as well.
No, do you know what? I'm quite coy with all that stuff. And I think if people want to find me, they'll find me. I think the one thing I would say is, like, I don't protest to be anything like a prep coach, but Loz, my passion is building physiques. So I think there's a lot of the industry that does the other end of this, the fat loss, the prep coach.
Yeah.
I actually I love the training and the programming and the building of the physique so much that's the only thing I'd say. If anyone out there ever wants to have a conversation about how they structure a week, how do they intensely, you know, manage some of their development areas, how do you balance your physique out, what's the right way to structure, you know, your programs, that's what I love to do. So yeah, no plugs for my coaching business, but yeah, if anyone ever wants just to have a conversation or a chat about how they might go about things, then I'm massively open to it. But yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a total joy. You were a joy, and it's been a massive pleasure.
No, thank you very much. And thank you very much to everybody for listening to this episode. As always, if you have enjoyed listening, if you can like, subscribe, follow, rate, and share, and definitely pop us a tag. If you do share that on your story, that would be fantastic. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, everyone. And I will be back with another episode next week.